were you born and when were you born?
Okay. I was born in Romania, a small village called Luna.
Luna?
Yes, Luna.
Okay. Okay. And when were you born? When was your...
In 1930, 30.
Okay.
It is 76 years old today, or 2 months ago.
Oh, okay. And Ludwig, you remember your parents?
Sure, I remember.
Okay, what was your father's name?
Jacob.
Jacob. And what did Jacob do for a living?
Okay, we have been in a small village, and he had a grocery store and a small pub, that people used to come and have a drink there.
Oh, okay. And what was your mother's name?
Hannah.
Hannah. And what did she do?
She was a
housewife.
Housewife and helping out in the store, and
Right. And how many children were there?
We have been 4, 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Okay. Were you the oldest?
No, I have a sister, oldest. She's still she lives in Israel.
So you were number 2?
Yes.
And what's your sister's name, the older one?
Zelda.
What is that?
Zelda.
Zelda, right, okay.
Or Sophia, if you know. And
right. And who is the third one? What was the name?
The third one is Chava.
Chava. And who is the little one?
Emmanuel.
Manuel.
Mendel, or whatever, we use the name Mendel.
Okay. Now, Ludwig, of the 6 people in your family, how many survived the Holocaust?
We all survived, all the 6.
Well, everybody in your family?
Yes.
So that's really a miracle.
That's right. We have to explain to you later why and how it happened.
Right, okay. Now, when you were little, Ludwig, did you live in a house or an apartment?
Oh, we lived in a house, which was also the front was the store, the grocery store.
The front of the house. So you lived in the back of the grocery store.
That's correct. But it was the only brick stone house in the village.
Right. Well, I guess you didn't get hungry living in the back of a grocery store.
No.
Right, okay. And did you have your own bedroom?
No, I don't think we had. We had maybe the 2 boys in one room and the 2 girls in the other room, but not...
Right. Now, did you also have, land around your property, or...?
No, not in this particular place. I can tell you now, my father had a kosher home, so we kept cows with some peasants that helped out, so she had milk and cheese and all this to be able to supply kosher milk and
Oh, so how many cows did you have?
Maybe 6 or 7, I don't remember exactly.
And was that mostly for the store?
No, it was for our own consumption.
Well, that's a lot of milk for a family to drink.
He maybe sold the rest of it, I don't remember.
Right. Did you have any other animals, like chickens or anything?
No.
No, okay. Now, when you were little, Ludwig, were you very religious?
My father was definitely kosher in Shabbos clothes. So I can now connect with this. I want to tell you that in 1933, the Romania started to be very anti-Semitism started to grow. And the peasants from the village, the younger people started knocking on the doors nighttime. They wanted to have drinks, so they woke up my father and all this. And later they wanted to force him to open on Shabbat, which before he never opened on Shabbat.
Right.
So in 1934, the parents had to decide to move. We moved out from this village to another village, which is called Weisz.
Okay.
And in that village was a bigger Jewish community. There was a rabbi, there was a shul, and it was much more controlled by the police, so we never had any problem with anti-Semitism there.
Right. Now, in the new village, did you also have a pub in the new village?
Yes, that's exactly the only thing that this time it was leased. Not a restaurant, a small pub and the grocery store.
Oh, so you didn't own it, you mean? You didn't own...
Didn't own it.
Right.
My father had there also a brewing from the grapes when they were left over. You squeeze out the grapes, they were boiling and making...
wine?
Not a wine, he made for his own kosher wine.
Right.
And they put it in the basement. But for people who wanted to have a sharp drink, like a tsuika is called, that you boil it and then cool it down through a cooler.
Right.
That was in the backyard.
Okay. Now, was he a man who had a hat and a beard and a hat?
Not a beard, no. He had a hat definitely, but not a beard.
Not a beard. Okay. And so then you moved, and you were in the second place up until the war, right?
That was the only quiet time from 1934 to 1940, reasonably quiet. And then started the problems.
Right. Now, when you were a kid, Ludwig, were you what kind of kid were you? Were you a good athlete? Were you a smart kid?
No, we went to Cheder, first to the school, which was a public school. Then in the afternoon we went to a Cheder. There were only 4 kids there, but we had a teacher, Melamed they used to call it, Melamed, that was teaching us Chimish and all this stuff.
Right, you were good in school though, right?
Definitely was good in school. Then we went to school, until I could go to school.
Right. Now, did you play any sports?
No, I don't remember. Only what I used to make, handmade ice skates. We used to make in winter time ice skating on the river.
Really? So what did
sport? I will tell you later when I reach to actually sport in the team.
Right. Okay. Now, how tall are you?
6'2".
So you were pretty tall back then.
Definitely.
You were about the tallest guy around, right?
And I was so skinny during the war that they could see all my ribs.
Right. So were you the tallest one in your family?
Yes.
Right. And you didn't play any basketball when you were little?
At that time, I don't think there was basketball, and everybody played soccer with just rag balls, metal balls, and kick the ball. That was the only really in the village any sport.
Right. Now, Ludwig, do you remember your grandparents at all?
No, I remember my grandmother, yes. I remember my grandmother.
On which side?
She was from my mother's mother.
Do you remember her name?
Yes, Golda, sure, I remember.
Golda? And do you remember anything about her?
I can tell you what I remember. She used to come in the summer in 1936-38, and she took me to another uncle in another city for vacation, summertime,
Right.
And when I went into this my uncle actually, and cousins there.
What was your uncle's name?
Polak, Gedalia.
Right.
And she introduced me to the family to watch out because this boy is a gunner. You know what's a gunner? And that was what was the gunner? That I went in the store and I took 2 lays at that time to buy ice cream on Shabbat. So it was never minded too late, but it was a Shabbos, and I took money and I went to buy myself an ice cream.
Right.
So that was the introduction she did for me.
Oh, so your grandmother, yeah.
Yeah, she came there, and she was almuna with 9 children. My mother used to be 9 brothers and sisters.
Really?
And
wow.
Then I can tell you how many of them really disappeared in the Holocaust. But you want to continue from my story, or I will tell you the...
You can tell me that now.
Okay. They have been, Transylvania was divided. If you know, Romania has Transylvania, which is the northern part of Romania.
Right.
And in 1940, with some Germans, agreed to divide half of Romania, of Transylvania, stayed with Romania, and half with the Hungarians.
Right.
And on the Hungarian side, which all my uncles and aunts lived with their families, and we were the only family that we stayed on the Romanian side.
Right.
And all the others have been in the northern part, which was the Hungarian side.
Right.
And in 1944, they collected all of them, and they all went to Auschwitz. And only one uncle survived he went to a labor camp, and then they ran away. They were hiding in the mountains, and he survived.
Right.
And one uncle in Israel that was already from 94, he survived, and all the rest of them with the children
None of the children survived?
No, I have from one of them, the same Polak which I told you, they survived, 4 of them.
Really?
4 children survived from them.
Right.
They have been also with some 9 or 10 children, but 4 of them, the elderly, they survived.
Right. Now, when you were little, Ludwig, how did you get around mostly? On foot or bicycle, horse and buggy, tram?
No, it was even this bigger village, there was no, we walked to school and we walked on the street, there was no bicycles and all this thing. It's not, there was nothing special. We walked all the time, or the only vacation was climbing somewhere on the mountains, or even I went even to work in the summer when there was no school to collect harvest grain,
Right.
And then it was just to get some exercise to see how people were living on the field. And used to walk to the fields and walk back home, and then at the end of the week they pay you with some grain, and you had to carry it on your shoulder back.
Right. Do you ever remember being in an automobile before the war?
In the automobile? I don't really remember if we have been in an automobile, no. At that time, cars in 1930s was a big thing there. When we saw a car, we were running after the car,
Right.
The taxi was a big thing.
Right.
We maybe went with a bus, we went to another city, then we went by bus, or I went by train to my uncles there, traveled.
Did you have a radio at home?
Yes, this we have the radio.
Okay.
The radio, and it was working on batteries, so no electricity.
So you had no electricity at home?
No.
Right. Okay. And so you were bar mitzvahed?
Bar mitzvah in the synagogue, yes, in the synagogue. 1 minute. Bar mitzvah was already during the war, so
right.
Not in that village. I will tell you what happened later.
Okay.
To get to the next paragraph.
Right. Okay. And were you part of any Zionist groups, or were you too young?
At that time, no.
You were too young.
Yes.
Right.
12 years old, 13 years old.
Okay. Did anybody in your family play a musical instrument? Like piano or?
No.
Nobody. Okay. And what languages did you speak?
No, home with my father, and this was all Yiddish. And then on the streets, we went to Romanian school. We learned Romanian, but on the most of the kids were Hungarian, so we had to speak Hungarian and Romanian. And home we spoke Yiddish.
Okay. And would you say that before the war, Ludwig, was your family rich or poor?
I mean, we were considered higher upper class because having our place of living, the business, and we could afford a lot of things that many people could not afford at that time.
Right. Okay. So you're at least upper middle class.
Upper middle class, yes.
Okay. Now, when you were little, were all your friends Jewish or were they mixed?
Excuse me?
Were all your friends only Jewish, or did you have Gentile friends?
I had also Gentile, because like I told you, Jewish we had in my age, I had only four of us in the village with the Amish. So the neighborhood, we played ball with them, on the streets, or ice skating, we went together, or there was always some streets were full of mud. So in the winter we had those, if you saw sometimes they did tie up those on wood, and only on 2 pieces of wood, and you were walking with them. I don't know how they call them. You see this in some parades that people are twice the size,
Oh, stilts?
Stilts, they call them?
Yeah, stilts. Yeah. So you look tall?
So you were maybe 2 feet more than...
Really?
And that was a game that you either try to run with them, and who get to the next, 50 meters. To be the first of it. But this was all before 1940.
Right. Now, you said you went ice skating, right?
Yes.
Did you go in a rink, or did you go in a lake, or where did you go?
A small river that froze in the winter time. A small river was running through the village, and there we do ice skating.
Right. Okay. Well, you said a little bit about it before. What kind of education did you have?
Now, I will tell you later. There we had only, I was what, 4th grade? Then at 1940, I was 10-year-old, so I was 3rd grade.
Right.
And in 1940, the new law came in that all the Jewish people from the village have to be accumulated and leave the home with nothing, just whatever you could carry with you.
Right, so your education was stopped by the war.
That's exactly.
Right, and when you went to school, that wasn't all Jewish, was it? That was mixed?
No, when I went there, school was public school with a
Right.
lot of non-Jews.
It was also, and did you go to Heder or like a Hebrew?
Yes, I went to Cheder, yes.
And what was Heder like?
I told you we have been only 4 students.
Right.
With Melamed there was teaching us
So-
Chumash and Torah.
So did he teach you in his own house, or did he come to your house?
No, we went to in the synagogue. We had a room there next to the synagogue. There we went to learn Cheder.
Right. Now, do you remember anti-Semitism before the war?
It was anti-Semitism, but in that second city, village we went, it was less than the first place we were.
Right.
And all the Christians there, Hungarian, Romania, they were permanent customers in our store. And then my father had a book, and they always write in they were buying on credit, and then when they got paid, they came and pay end of the week, and paid. Some of them paid, some of them didn't pay, but that was the way living was.
Right. Were you ever called names, or did you ever get in a fight because you were Jewish?
Very, very, very seldom, not too much really. In that first village, there it was very strong anti-Semitism there.
But you were very little, so you can't remember too much about anti-Semitism.
No.
At that time, right? Okay. So anything else you remember before the war that's important? That you.
Like before the war.
Yeah. That's interesting or important.
I can tell you that my father, being a Shomer Shabbat,
Right.
he had to walk 6 kilometers to a synagogue.
Wow.
In another village, there was no synagogue. So,
Right.
And then if it was a holiday, he slept over in some other friends or family, so he didn't have to walk home and come again.
Really?
And he was very supportive of the synagogue, naturally, and very strict kosher home. And I didn't go yet at that time to walk, but that was his system, that to keep a kosher home and to go to synagogue. And if there was some bar mitzvah somewhere in the family, then we used to take a horse carriage and stay to walk and go all the family to attend some ceremony, the bar mitzvah or wedding.
Right. So it sounds like your father put a lot of emphasis on keeping to his values.
His values, yes.
Right. Okay. Now, when did things start to get bad?